Scott's been a champion for us at the State House ever since I met him.
Thank you. Thanks, Chuck. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with a bunch of patriots here today. This is the safest place, once again, in the state of Ohio, and I'm glad to be here with you. When you got patriots that are armed and ready, we are safe. And I try to make that statement every single time I talk about guns, either in Columbus or with our caucus, when we try to debate and argue and try to push forward these issues that are so important to us. Scott Wiggam, state representative. I'm out of Wayne County, okay, so that's Worcester and Orrville. And I'm happy to be known as one person who is not very well liked by the DeWine administration. I pushed forward. I haven't even told you why yet, but you're happy about that. Because I pushed forward the Terry Johnson SB 22 bill to rein in his power and make sure he wasn't going to continue down the path of mandates. So I pushed that forward in the House. I pushed that bill forward in the House, and we added a few things, Terry, and I'm appreciative that the Senate concurred with that, and we got a lot of things done in that bill. I still want more. I'm not done. We need to go further, but we need to take it step by step, because the Democrats have been doing that for the last 60 years. Right. So it's time for us to take it step by step, get what we can, and keep on going and never stop. I want to tell you just a few things about some of the bills that I am supporting and have introduced and am working on, besides trying to rein in some of the governor's mandates and some of those things that he's doing. The gun bills that I have. I actually have 3 that I have sponsored, and one, of course, is very particular to you, and that's House Bill 89, which is the no duty to notify if you encounter a law enforcement officer as a concealed handgun license holder. You all know that, you all understand the argument, you understand why it's nonsense, and it should never have been in the concealed handgun license bill from the very beginning when it was passed years ago. And it's something that should be cleaned up and taken out of the law. And as I say to my fellow caucus members in the Republican Party, we don't have any law that makes drug dealers that have a gun underneath their seat illegally notify law enforcement. There's no reason that we should be taking the safest citizens, really, demographically speaking. Concealed handgun license holders are the safest citizens in the nation, okay? You are the safest people that we have. And every law enforcement officer, knowing that you are a concealed handgun license holder, knows that they are probably encountering the safest stop that they will have all day if they had to stop you for going 10 miles over the speed limit. So that is one of the bills that I have. It went to my committee, and lo and behold, in 2 weeks it was voted out of my committee positively, and it's sitting below the black line. Now, before you say, well, why in the world is it sitting below the black line? The conversations, I will just say to you, have been, we have constitutional carry, as you know, coming up. And I would agree with the conversation that we had, that is your God-given right. And you should not have to have a law to do that, and to either open carry or behind your jacket carry, right? You should be able to do that. But we need to make sure then that the law recognizes your right, unfortunately. And so I'm always pushing for constitutional carry. In constitutional carry, necessarily, we would get rid of the duty to inform, which is a duty that you should not have. So constitutional carry would get that. So the conversation right now is, and leadership is not against constitutional carry, we're trying to work that bill right now, and if that bill comes forward, this bill, House Bill 89, will be put right into that. Of course, if constitutional carry, if some reason, some of those other, go to your members, wherever you are located, because I only have about 4 people that can vote for me here. Go to your members wherever you're located, make sure that they know that this is what they need to do, make sure that constitutional carry gets voted out of the House, goes to the Senate, and gets passed there too, because House Bill 89 will be in constitutional carry, and I want you all to know that. And so those are the conversations that we have right now. And what I consistently say to our caucus and to our leadership and to the Speaker is, if you want to get something done, you better get it done in the primary. You have a chance of this governor signing it in the primary. You don't have a chance after the primary. Okay? So that's our chance to try to get that done, and I'm just trying to speak to you logistically. Because we had a governor that came in saying that he understood the gun issues. He said that I've changed, I've learned more, and I will sign constitutional carry. But unfortunately, all we've had are conversations about red flags.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just telling you that this is a fight that's going on, and it's a continued fight that we have in Columbus to make sure that the Republicans don't get weak-kneed against a Republican governor, and that we keep on pushing forward the things that we know we need to do in Columbus. And you need to make sure that we keep on pushing those things forward. Another couple of bills that I have right now is the Emergency Powers Act, Firearm Emergency Powers Act. As you know, as we saw in 2020, the governor took a lot of power that we didn't expect that he had. There were things that were done that we looked into the legislative code section saying, how in the world do you think you have the power to do that? And he just did them. Under 1301.07. So basically, which was an open-ended phrase that allowed the Department of Health director to do other things in order to stop the spread of, and so they did everything. In other states it was even worse, of course, than our state. But we went too far, and we had a governor that took too much liberty to take away your liberty. So on this, we know that there had been other states where they shut down gun sales, they shut down firearms, firearm transactions, any type of firearm transaction, and even the selling of ammunition. So this firearm act that I have, Emergency Powers Act, would make it very clear in the state of Ohio that no governor now or in the future would ever have the power to make anything, make any law, or take any law out of the current code or even Constitution to say that they can interpret it to take and shut down a firearm dealership or so forth. Or that in a time of crisis, it's a time to try to round up people's guns. This would make it just very clear, and we would, you would think that we wouldn't need this to explain this to future governors, but we know that we do need this. I have another bill. This bill is called the FIND Act. It's the Firearm Industry Non-Discrimination Act. And so any company that is going to be doing business with the state of Ohio, any company that's going to be doing business with the state of Ohio cannot overtly discriminate against firearm dealerships, firearm ammunition companies, or anything in their statement. As you know, what we're seeing in our nation and what we're seeing in our state are large woke corporations that are saying that we don't like guns, and we don't like the Second Amendment, and we don't think 21-year-olds should be able to own a pistol, and we don't think 18-year-olds should have a rifle. We don't think you should have a gun whatsoever, and we're not going to do business with gun companies. And they put that in their basically their mission statement. Sometimes they don't put it in their mission statement. We just know it because they've said it somewhere down the line. Those companies will not be able to do business with the state of Ohio and take your tax dollars if this bill passes. So that's one thing that we have to do, I think, as pro-Second Amendment patriots, to try to fight back against these woke issues that are coming down the line. We've got to use the same type of mechanisms that the Democrats and the left have used for over 60 years. We've got to use that because we should have the power. And so one of the issues that I'm having right now is the bank. Lo and behold, the banks don't like this bill. The banks don't like this bill. This bill passed in Texas, by the way, and Texas didn't vote for Trump like Ohio did, and it still passed in Texas. The small banks were not worried about this. It's only the large banks that are worried about this bill. But the fact of the matter is you need to make sure that you're telling your representatives, your senators, that we need to get these things passed, and we need to protect our rights that are God-given and found in our Constitution, and we need to make it very clear as we go forward. So that's another bill that we have going on right now, and one other bill that we are currently working, and I'm working with Ohio gun owners, is House Bill 62. It's Mike Loychek bill and Diane Grindel's bill, and so we're currently working. I'm hoping to get that through committee when we get back in September, the first week of September, because we're on session break right now. Doesn't mean I'm breaking anything. I'm trying to get as many bills drafted and out as possible. But this bill kind of signifies what I think states like Ohio, Florida, and Texas should be doing, and that is drawing legal walls around their state. Because we see some bad things coming down the line with the federal government. We've seen it before. We saw how the deep state, the swamp, was fighting against Donald Trump, and we know that they're going to continue doing that. And they're going to continue doing that until the federal government, in my opinion, just completely implodes. And we need to be ready as a state to be able to stand up on our own and block some of these things that may be coming down the line from the federal government. And one of those are any decisions out of the ATF or Biden's administration that changes gun laws in the nation. Whether it's through the legislative process in Washington, D.C., which I don't think it would go through that. It's always going to be these little changes and tweaks through the ATF, as you just heard recently. So 62 would nullify those types of changes in our gun laws and say, we, as the state of Ohio, are not going to follow that. That's not what our law enforcement are not going to enforce those issues. And that's what we need to, we're working those issues out and trying to make sure that we have the votes to get that done. And we have the ability to draft those legal walls around the state of Ohio. Yes?
Is that specifically going to include local law enforcement agencies cannot participate in federal task involved in that?
Correct. He's asked if it will include local law enforcement agencies. It would include any agent in the state of Ohio, whether local, whether it's local or whether it's a state trooper or anyone. So I kind of say it as this. Biden would love to make sure that a 10-round magazine, of course, is all you could own. We've seen them already try to push that, of course, a few years ago. It didn't work, and it just made matters worse. If they go down and say, well, if you've got a 12-round magazine or a 17-round Glock magazine, you're no longer following the federal law. The state of Ohio would not only not follow that with our law enforcement agents, we would be able to allow for the lawsuit of any political entity that pushes those laws or has their members, their agents, push those laws. We would do a lawsuit immediately, and then we would force those entities, such as Cuyahoga County or Franklin County, pay for your federal court charges and pay for your federal court defense. So we want to make it so prohibitive that they could never do this. So we're talking about all those issues around this bill, the OGO, and I think that we're going to be able to get something that I'm hoping that not just passes out of the committee, but passes the black line. So those are the things that we're working on right now, and I will take some questions, Chuck, if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, about that bill, let's say hypothetically that the federal government got even crazier than they are right now and decided to come door to door, and they didn't believe my story about the boating accident. I would like to know if I can reason, if the bill were to pass, that there's not going to be any Ohio law enforcement coming with them.
Okay, so he's asking about Ohio law enforcement being a part of the door-to-door ATF, FBI, whatever agency from the federal government. No, that is the actual point of this. That would be one of the main points of this bill.
Awesome.
There's other things that we're working out. What we would do is there would be an actual divide. So often what will happen is the ATF or FBI will be calling the local jurisdiction and saying that we're coming to a town near you. Maybe you can set up cordons or let us meet at your location to plan out this raid. And the answer is absolutely not. And if a local entity, public entity, even goes further than saying, hey, thank you for the phone call, we're not interested, if they go further than that, they are going to be liable under Ohio state law.
Just a quick follow-up on the FIND Act. Does that include specific targeting of credit card companies that are going to try to demonetize firearm-related business?
Yes, it does.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
The FIND Act will include that. Okay, yes.
I don't know if you're already working on it or not, or if it's a part of current legislation that you're working on. Is there any future plans of looking at civil immunity in Ohio for people that are involved in self-defense shootings and are found innocent by a court of law, so they don't get bankrupt in civil courts?
That is a fantastic question. So civil immunity is something that I don't know if we have in any of these bills. Maybe we do have. Terry's going to talk to you about that next.
Okay, good.
I don't need to keep on talking, but Terry's going to talk to you about that next. And I just want to tell you one thing, as I have continued to push forward, okay, what I thought was just supposed to be a simple bill, right? And it will pass the House. Your bill will pass the House. But it's been a tragedy in the Senate for some reason. That's before Terry got there. It won't be a tragedy now. But it's been a tragedy in the Senate for some reason. It's always gotten blocked up with other stuff. Now let me say this. The bill that I'm talking about is the duty to inform.
Right.
As I've told you, we will get that done. I'm trying to wait to make sure that I'm pushing constitutional carry, and I'm going to slide, of course, the duty to inform in that. Because, of course, it would make no sense for you to have, for constitutional carry to come forward and you to have a gun behind your jacket and not have to say anything to law enforcement unless you have a CHL and then you have to say something, which would be the dumbest thing in the world. So anyhow, they should just go together naturally. But that's what we're working on right now. And that's what we'll keep on fighting for as we go forward. Yeah, another question.
Yeah, how do you talked about the bill for the state of Ohio. In other words, the government can't come in and say they want to take your guns if they decide to do that. But they've already proven down in Florida, DeSantis says we're not going to pay those teachers if they continue to teach critical race. And Janice Psaki, or whatever her name is, come out and said, well, we're just going to look at a way we can go around that, and we'll go ahead and pay them teachers anyway, which is unconstitutional. So we've seen that the Constitution means nothing to them. So how do you stop an unconstitutional federal government that wants to overreach the state government like they don't even aren't even there? How do you stop them?
So he's asking about the federal government always trying to go around conservative states or laws that would protect you. And that's always going to be an issue that we're going to have to go to. That's always an issue that we're going to have to look at. But what you do in some of these laws is you continue to build up the ability to go after the jurisdictions, the political jurisdictions that will enforce these laws or push these laws on the people.
You're saying courts.
Well, courts and fines. You can also do fines on them.
So how do you find the federal government when they take
that's okay. So now you're talking about an issue that's even further. I mean, and those are questions that we're asking right now. But that's a serious question. What do you do with the federal government when it comes to the end and you just simply can't?
The only solution I see is to sue the individual personally. Like Bill O'Reilly was talking about, all the Republican governors getting together and suing Biden personally for his failure to enforce the border laws. Make it a personal suit against him by all the governors. So if people would stick together and file a personal suit against the people that's trying to do this. No, we're not against agency, we're going to sue you personally.
Lawsuits personally.
There's constitutional restrictions against.
I think we've seen with the examples that City of Columbus and Cincinnati have provided us, they don't care about fines, or they're going to do what they want to do until the court tells them they can't do it, and even if they have to pay a fine, they'll do it.
So I'll have to get with you and talk about the fines that you're talking about. I think one of the things is to try to make them high enough and make it expensive enough. Once again, in that jurisdiction, if that jurisdiction is to partake in this, if they're to help this out, they also have to pay for the defense. And then they also can be sued, okay, in a state court. So you try to take it back to the state court, you try to take these issues back to the state court and make sure you have state law. Now, what do you do about individuals that are not judges that won't follow state law? Well, we've got a lot of conversations that we'll have. And I'll take any ideas and information that you have because, those are the issues that we might come up against. But we've got to start setting the groundwork to get these things passed, put them in place, and protect our rights and our freedoms. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. I agree with you. I mean, we have a president right now who is just completely disregarding the law. And his allies in the media don't even talk about it anymore. Donald Trump didn't disregard the law. He had to follow the law, and he fought against it in the court, and the court fought against him. But you don't even have that now. They won't even talk about the fact that he's completely disregarding the law. They're trying to force Americans into all sorts of, into COVID shots, into masks, and all sorts of requirements, while taking thousands upon thousands of illegal aliens and dropping them off in our cities. Absolutely, it is a, we are, listen, I was going to try to talk to you a little bit about the crossroads that we're at as a country, but you've heard that over and over again. I understand that. And I think that that's where I am trying to continually tell our caucus and our Republicans that we've got to stand up and we've got to be ready to take these things on. And not just be reactive because we've been reactive for so long. We have to start putting and implementing things that will foresee what's going to happen a few years from now. Because as I said, I think the left plots these things out and they're willing to work them out in 40 years.
They do a better job of implementing their agenda.
Absolutely, they do.
They're better fighters.
Yeah, well they have, so here, I say this often. When I'm talking to my friends and we want freedom and liberty, we just simply want to say, hey, leave us alone. And we try to draft reactive bills to say, leave us alone, right? That's what we do. And we need to be much more influential in thinking about these things and putting together plans that will not just say, leave us alone, but will stop this stuff in the forefront. I mean, that's what, I agree with you. It's got to happen, it's got to happen now. That's the conversations I'm trying to make sure that we have in our Republican caucus to make sure that we're doing the things that you want. Once again, I will say this. In the House, we passed a couple of things. We passed it, so one thing that we were able to do and get a consensus on is that there could be no mandates, private or public, no coercion of you getting your COVID vaccination, that you couldn't lose your job over it, private or public. And we also, and so that is something that the Senate's going to have to deal with. Now that was only for the COVID vaccination while it's under the emergency. So it would change, and I'm fighting to make it so you never have to. There's no way you should ever be coerced by a private or public entity into taking an injection, period.
My body, my choice, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, you don't hear that anymore by the other side, do you? So, you know, one of the things that I will say, and I see this right now, as you know, the Marxists that are influencing the left so well in America wanted to so long divide our country, make sure that we had a massive amount of poverty and a massive amount of elite, and you have to get rid of the middle class. You have to get rid of the people in the middle. And weren't too successful on that. And so they've switched it over to critical race theory, and maybe they can divide us on race and hating each other that. And if that can't work, if they're not getting if they're not pushing forward on that, they're going to divide us between the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. And I know this for a fact because I have talked to some leftists in my community who think that the unvaxxed people are the people that they should be fearful of. And there's absolutely no data or science.
But that's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
There's no data or science that shows that. Okay, we know that for a fact. These are issues that we're dealing with. I'm fighting for these every single day to make sure that we can live in freedom. So I really thank you for your time, and I will. I just want to tell you one thing. I don't know if I said this about Senator Johnson. When I first introduced this bill, and we had this discussion in the caucus, and obviously, as you know, for the House Bill 89, which basically says, listen, you're not criminals. You don't have a duty to notify anytime you come encounter with law enforcement. Just as a drug dealer who's got an illegal gun is not notifying law enforcement because you are not a threat. You're good people. When I was first introduced and talked about that bill, and we had some FOP, who I appreciate FOP. I say we refund the police, not defund the police. But they don't quite understand this, and at the top level, FOP has been against this bill. And so that has affected some of the Republican votes when we have these conversations in a caucus. And Terry Johnson has always supported this from the very beginning, and he thinks this bill should go through, and he was a big fighter for it in the backroom caucus discussion. The sheriffs did not talk about it this year. Here's the thing about the sheriffs. The reason why there's some liberal sheriffs of large counties and there's conservative sheriffs. I don't know if they actually they never came out and spoke against this in the House. They had been, I think they try to stay away from it somewhat.
I think they're too divided among themselves.
I think they're a little bit divided among themselves, but the fact of the matter is the reason why the sheriffs kind of stayed out of this is because they have to be elected by the people. And this is what the people want.
Right. Right.
Thank you. Thank you again for your time.